Tonight we welcome PERIS+TORAL.
I have to say that with Pierre Vittorio, when we tried to imagine a lecture series about housing, first of all, we thought about social housing, but in social, we didn't mean cheap housing, but the possibility of housing to be also a way to share spaces with common spaces, but also in different ways. So I think that the project that José will present us tonight is a quite incredible one because the project is made by equal one. So it means that the equity seems to be a sort of common condition to live all together. And it's a very strong point of your project, I think. Equity is also an equity of surfaces, but also an equity of relationships. This is a non-hierarchical project, so it's quite interesting in a social way, I mean. It's also a moment where José will explain the project from the beginning to the end. The beginning doesn't start at the beginning of the first line in a page, but sometimes and always with your own culture and your own interests and your own researches. And I know that you will talk about this, but Marta made a PhD about the filmmaker Ozu, and his research is sort of how can I say?
It's like a sub.
Yes, this was a starting point to the project. So you will see the relationships between research and project here. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Well, we are two partners, Marta and myself, Marta Peris and José Toral, and we will talk about this project that it's called MODULUS MATRIX. But instead, just to begin to talk about this project, we have to talk about this PhD about Marta, that she tried to analyze the Japanese house. And some of the characteristics of the Japanese house are this idea of the modularity, because everything is related with the tatami. A tatami measures in relation with the human body, so it measures 1.80 meters by 90, and it's a kind of architecture that grows from the interior to the exterior. So it's not that when you see this is an old town, when you see that it's like the main road, but the shape is changing, and it's like it can be like aggregating very easily. And then the other thing is that all the bathrooms and the kitchens, they're always outside these systems of rooms, and they have these engawas that we can see over there, that they are filtering the relation from the interior and the exterior, and they guide you through these zones with the water. Okay. And another of the characteristics is this idea of the ambiguity. They don't call spaces because of the use, because they, as said, one use can be done in different spaces, and one space can have different uses. So they cannot call spaces by its function. So they normally use the size in order to do this. So they end up with a very flexible kind of a space, because it's a space that they are able to reprogrammate during the day. And finally, there is this idea of porosity. The porosity has a lot to do with the climate. So it's an architecture very related with the climate. It's a very warm summers where it's warm all the year with a very high humidity. So they need to ventilate a lot. That means that they made very wide openings. So there's not narrow openings. So like 1 tatami, 1.80 meters. And normally they put 3-4 doors into a room. So that means that this porosity that at the beginning was a bit because of the climate and for the wind, it's also for the movement of people in the house. So there are double circulations, so we can multiple ways of moving through the house. Here we can see in this example, the kitchen and the bathroom outside, the Ngawa. The Ngawa always filter this relation between the interior and the exterior. So, but at the same time, it's a way of moving through the house. Okay, so Marta wanted to analyze that, but then what happened is that as you have a very ambiguous plan, you cannot understand it unless you put the life into it. So that's why she took Yasuhiro film. So he's a filmmaker that he died in the 60s, and so he's only have like five or six color movies. The rest are in black and white. It's around 40 films in his filmography, and he always like recording the domestic life in Japan, and mainly one of the issues is this changing of from the tradition to the modernity that is a lot related after war, after losing the war from the Japanese and accepting all the American culture that was going into there. So it's nice because we can understand this compares between Western and Eastern, okay? So she kind of finds some special mechanics that happen over there, like the interconnected rooms, double circulation, the fourth wall, they always put the patio the same size as one of the rooms, so you understand it as another room. So when you see the fence, it's an exterior room. And then through that, she understands some of the attributes that you can have in the Japanese house, the expansive house, concentrated house, dispersed house. Well, there are many, you can see it in the... So now, to understand this, I will put a small fragment of one of Arthur's films. This is one of his last films. I think he only did 2 more after that one. And it's the most beautiful house we have seen. And this scene is talking about grandfather and grandson playing the hide and seek game. Well, and the other thing that Marta did by looking at the films is redraw all the plan of the houses. And this plan has a lot to do what we later did in the Modulus Matrix project. And here we see all the movements of the daughter that sometimes go through here or through there, and how he's using this space to hide from her, and the multiple possibilities of movement, and also the Ngawa, and also this relation with the bathroom and the kitchen, and also this is the fourth wall, this relation with the exterior. So here we see one of the plans of the Ngawa, that this, you don't really know if it's an interior or exterior, but the pavement is more resistant than the mat. Okay, sometimes you have these diagonals that you have this diaphragm, is that you are able to see many rooms with this porosity that you. So this is it's not very usual because Arthur normally films straight shots. But sometimes when he wants to explain more tension, he has so it becomes narrower, the porosity, but it's deeper. And this is in the other direction. Again. So here, this idea of having the garden, it's in the middle of this sequence, So your interior, exterior, interior. So all these kinds of things are always happening in this Japanese house, These diagonals on the enfilade, This is the typical shot of with this one, with the garden at the end, that it looks like another. So this is in one direction, and this is in the other direction. No, well, actually, no, it's the 2 of them, sorry. One beside the other. And as I was saying, this is the project. So it has lots of relations. So whenever we redraw this plan, we were really surprised how simple it was, and by seeing the films, all the possibilities that you can have in that. So, and in the office, we we're very concerned of thinking of new ways of inhabiting. How do we have to live in the 21st century? So, so in all the projects, this idea of equal rooms is something that we have tried in many projects, and always it's one of the projects. They are, they're also related with a new way of construction. We think that answering to the challenges of the 21st century, we have to think of new ways of inhabiting, but also related with new ways of constructing. Okay, and this is something that we always explain, but I will repeat it again. We think that all architecture has to be with this integral sustainability, that has to be environmental, economic, and socially sustainable, but not all the environmental decisions are viable economically. Not all the economic decisions are equitable socially, and not all the social decisions are viable environmentally. And only when something is viable, equitable, and viable, it's really sustainable. And that's why the strategies that we take in the studio are not focusing into one of it. So their focus is in the middle of two. So whenever we want to be environmental and social, we try to space to generate intermediate spaces like atriums, patios, that they will have a very important climate issue, but at the same time, they will give an opportunity for a social place. Whenever we want to be environmental and economic, the strategy is reducing. Because every time you reduce, you need less amount of material, and it's much more sustainable and much more cheaper. So we reduce the amount of material, the amount of layer. So every decision try to reduce. And finally, whenever we want to be economical and economical and social, the idea is sharing. So every time you share, you're able to be more economical because you only do a thing once, but it's useful for all of them. But at the same time, so it's cheaper, but at the same time, you have a social benefit. You generate an interaction between the users. Okay, so from that, we will go to explain this modulus matrix. You know, the facade, it's all equal because, you know, this is like one of the positions, you know, the democratic house, no? So there's no composition at that project. So just to understand, where are we? So we are in Cornellà. Cornellà is a town, but actually it belongs to Barcelona. So this is the metropolitan area of Barcelona. So this is like the highway that goes around Barcelona. And this is one of the neighborhoods, that it's a town, so it's around here. So it has a very low income per year per family, but so it has a very strong condition, okay? So, and also when we get closer, we are here in the middle of this new neighborhood of the 60s, that it was for the workers, it was a polygon of blocks, you know, this modern movement idea. So here we can see the blocks, and we are here because here there used to be a cinema. So it was a very big cinema, so everybody loved the cinema, and so they turned, it was like 10 years without use, so they turned it down. People were very angry because they thought, okay, it was called the Pisa cinema. So in Spanish, pisos, it's like home. So it was saying like Pisa sí, pisos no. They were against doing this building. But the nice thing is that it has such a generous scale in relation to the blocks that we normally see. And I always explain that we nearly didn't do the competition because all the planning was totally decided. So we thought, okay, maybe we cannot do nothing. So, but then we give it a chance. So we have to be a plot of 50 by 40 with a courtyard of 25 by 15. So the idea, okay, let's begin from the interior and try to think how to do the house of the 21st century. And this was this idea of being more democratic and thinking of changing the unit of aggregation instead of thinking of the dwelling beside the other, one room beside the other. So at the beginning, we didn't know how many dwellings can we have per plan, but we knew that we can have 114 spaces per plan, okay? And then the nice thing is that when things are equal, there is no hierarchy. So we think that the house of the parents does have to be bigger than the room of the sons. So, and this is also better when you think that there's not only the nuclear family. Now we have new kinds of family, people that decide to live together. So by having equal spaces, we can have like this flexibility and this potential, no? But one of the issues is that in Spain, the regulations for a room are like very tiny. You know, a single room is 6 square meters, double room 8 square meters, main room 10 square meters, but 10 square meters is not able to work as a living room or a kitchen with a living room. So that's why we went back to Marta's PhD. We thought, okay, let's try the 8 tatami room that measures 360 by 360, nearly 13 square meters. Okay. Then we found out afterwards that one of the versions of Kretilisowski kitchen of Frankfurt was measuring 350 by 360, or La Petite Cabanon of Le Corbusier was measuring 366 by 366. And now we have the more flexible room, the more technical room, and the room for thinking of Le Corbusier all fit in the system. Okay, so at that point, we have some intuitions that maybe the water zones will be in the middle. So then at this point, we place the cores in the corner where we don't have that much light, and we try to put the dwellings having always advantage of the cross ventilation through the patio or because of the corner situation. And finally, we have this scheme of the timber structure that the 360 distance maybe was good for rethinking the structure with timber. And in the ground floor, we decided, okay, instead of entering directly to each one of the cores from the street, maybe we can do a porch, so we can give like a door of the scale of the city, and everybody has to enter to this patio, so the patio will work as a hub, as a BNS hub. So it's one of the first relation spaces, and then you enter into there. So, and then also in the basement, we put in space to put another cinema, so keep the memory of the space, and also the parking, just to solve the regulation, the minimum for the regulation. So under the courtyard, we have this space waiting for the cinema to be done. Okay, and here we can see this idea of the porch that decompress your living into from the city to the courtyard and generate this transition of intermediate spaces. And then we thought of this. This is an image of Familisterio of Gise. It's related to the Familisterio, and it's built by Godin. That he has a factory. He was making like heating systems, and it was for his workers. And it's nice because even though he was making heating systems, he had the confidence of using architecture to heat the building. So this is something that finished at the 19th century. So in the 19th century, they still thought that with the architecture we can solve our problems of comfort. But this is something that we lost in the 20th century with the use of petrol and the use of the invention of the air conditioning and thinking that with the mechanics we can solve everything. But we had that image in the mind, and the proportion was exactly the same that we had at that. So we decided to do this. So to cover all the patio, so increase this temperature with this big atrium, so it's like this big element, so it has this behavior. So we did it until just before the construction, we just until the end, the last moment, we covered it with EPFL. So we developed all the systems, and it was opening. Well, and then all this behavior of in winter, it was heating. In summer, it was working as a chimney, a solar chimney, so it generates more movement of the air. Okay, and we did all these kinds of simulations. So we were outside 11 degrees, and we can increase 7 degrees into the interior. And this is in winter, and in summer, we were able to generate a movement of the air of 1.4 meters per second. So that means that every half meter per second is 1 degree of thermal filling. So you have 3 grades of thermal filling that went down. So we were really happy with this relation between the Gise and our project. But then we did, the final simulation was the acoustics. And it had the proportion of a pavilion. And normally, in order to have a comfort, you need at least 1.5 seconds of reverberation. But by covering this space, it was 4 seconds. And as we were thinking of everything ventilating through here, and everybody with the indifferentiated use and maybe the televisions, and we thought, okay, maybe this can be a disaster. So we decided not to cover it. Okay, so we didn't cover it, but it was funny because we found out that we still have some environmental behavior, because like we did the porch, this area, so soft is coming from there, so this area is every time, all the day with shadow, and this area, so this is also the regulations, this is lower, just to fit with the neighbor, and then this area, it's all the day with this heat of the sun. So the hot air goes up, and the cold air is down, so that generates a pressure, so every time you're here, the air is moving in this direction. Also, we put some vegetation that, we generate some microclimate, so we have some behavior. So this is one of these spacing spaces that behaves like a patio that helps for the climate in summer, and also it's a social place. So going back to the porch, we are very interested of this idea of filtering. For us, having the fence, having this limit, it's very important, but has to be a filter. Has to be something that allows the view to go through, allows the air to go through, and that gives the identity, So we use this metal mesh, and this is in the other direction. Then when we entered, we had the ground floor, the structure of the ground floor and the basement with concrete, and then everything was timber in the top. So this is so we use this concrete in the first floor, and then we have the stair is the moment where there's the encounter of different materials. So you try to use the texture as a way to relate different materials. So we go up. Now we have, this is the first room that is a room made of wood, that is the stair. Okay, this is from the stair. So it's not a corridor. So we are entering through some of the terraces, but this is the same point of view from the stairs to space. And as I was saying, the importance that everything was fitting into the same scale of rooms. So here also, the stair became centered here. Sorry. So here we go through the porch, we go up, and this is the only the only corridor we have. So we enter through this room, and then, so this is private spaces, and this is very important because that helps that when you enter to the patio, you see all the life of people. So they have 2 terraces, and it's something that it was very important. And here we see how is the growing. So you enter through the stair. This is a room where you enter. Then this is the ngawa. So this is space that relates the interior space with the exterior. And then when you are entering, how you are conquering, and how do you see the different spaces of the matrix. Okay. Well, and we end up with this plan that it's a bit hypnotic because in some way it's very difficult to understand which is the limit of the public between the different units and between the public spaces or the private. No, the only thing that we understand is that we have two engawas. No, we have an engawa, a relation between interior and exterior. Actually, engawa was what we said in the competition, the name of the competition, and then this is like, it looks like very simple, but here, this is the final version, and this is the overlapping of all the versions that we draw to end up here. But so at the end, it was really nice, but okay, it took a bit. Okay. But if we go closer, we can. It's not that difficult. So we have a room for the stair, and then another room where the lift led you, and then we can enter 3 bedrooms here, 3 dwellings here, and 2 more that we are entering through the terrace. No, and in the other one, here we only entered 2 of them and 2 more, so 4 per plan, 5 per plan, 18 in each plan, and here we can see. But for us, it was very important to have this porosity, to have more than 1 door, and using the exterior space also as engawa, that we can make these double circulations. And this is a really interesting point that we will end at the end, that this is not the version of the competition was more radical. So we also had doors here. And this is something that, talking with the client, we end up that at that moment, society is not ready yet, but we prepared everything that this could be done in the future. But this is like some of the final conclusions that we will talk about. Okay. Okay. So now we will see the architect's photos. So there are no people here. So well, this is the entrance. This is from this. Interior private terrace facing the space. No, this idea of the enfilade. No, that you, even though you're in 30 square meters small, but you have these wide openings that you can see one space through the other. No, or when you put the kitchen in the center, you show the domestic work. So you fight against the role of gender. So everybody knows what's happening there, and also it's a piece that allows us to do a house with no corridors, because it's like the center, it's the core, the social place in the house, and also we can put doors everywhere. It's the only piece that allows us to have the maximum porosity. Then sometimes when this is a room, but then we have these telescopic doors, so we can like enlarge the house or concentrate it. So we can have like this possibility with the sliding doors to change the perception of the house, and also the importance of the corners, because it's what allows the user how to approach their furniture, or this thing that you're in one space and you're able to see 4 more spaces in one point of view because of this idea of the porosity. And then this engawa, this space that it's working mainly for the summer, because once we didn't put the atrium, all the effort was try not to need a system for the summer, and we keep the system only for the winter, so we have the heating, and then we try to, so all the solar protection is in the out part, and then there are like fixed in front of the fixed, and these wooden ladders in front of the windows. No, so and also this is like everything is white, so it doesn't get warm. It reflects the heat, and also this is a very ventilated facade. And also we expose the timber in order to have the hygroscopic regulation from the wood to the space. Okay, so this is like all the construction system, and everything is enclosure with this mesh that it allows you to see all the life, but at the same time unifies everything. No? So, and it changes a lot depending of how the sun is facing into the mesh.
Definitely.
And then, very important, because we had many meters of this mesh, we needed to do it very cheap. So what we did, instead of welding, we used what Prouvé did in all his furniture, used the strategy of folding. So just by folding, by giving geometry with no welding, we are able to use one sheet and give it the resistance that we don't need. So that made really cheap, this solution. So, and everything is extruded, so there's no welding, and that made everything really simple. So when this is back, here we can see this detail. That it was funny because at the beginning we folded to the inside, but the client was worried about the kids maybe touch it, so we did it the other way around and it was much better. So it's like funny when you let yourself be able to get surprised, no? So this is actually working as a beam. You know, it's like here and there in a very low scale. And then the interior facade, because here we have the issue of intimacy. This is not a problem that we didn't have in the outside. We put the solar protection in the inner part, and it's this mesh, this metal mesh that allow you to see from the interior to the exterior, but you cannot see from the exterior to the interior. And then if we go up with the stair, we end up to this space that is one of the common space for the users. Okay, and now we see all this relation between the construction and the final building. Okay, and let's talk about timber construction. Okay. For the way we understand, in the last centuries, there is one material that has been like the most important in each century. So for us, 19th century, you know, steel is like the big winner. So, and it's always related, so it's not an issue of the architecture, it has to be with technology. So there is this invention of the cast iron, and then 100 years later they understand they can use it with the arch, but the cast iron is not good with flexion, but they use it like the arch, and they do some pancras in London, no? Then they do the forged, they invent the forged iron, and 50 years later, Joseph Paxton is able to do the Crystal Palace, no, with very big spawn, no, because now we have a material that is able to solve this, and also they mentioned, well, the cheap way to manufacture glass. And finally, you know, with the laminated steel, we were able to conquer all the heights in Chicago, no? So there's like this evolution that has to do of all the development of architecture in the 19th century. The 20th century is the century of the concrete. So everything begins with this lighthouse, the Eddystone Lighthouse, that it was keep falling every time. So they made a competition how to solve this. And John Smeaton, he found a way using the Portland stone to manufacture very high temperature to create a cement that was able to get hard underwater. And that's how they made this. And then Joseph Lemonnier, he was a gardener again, and he did these things for plants. But somebody thought, okay, we can maybe use this reinforced concrete, no, with iron to do the slabs and the structure. And Le Corbusier defined this system, that is the system that explains all the architecture of the 20th century. I will try to explain it, but Per Vittorio is the one that explains that very well. But, you know, it's like this invention is not only, it's an in situ system, and, you know, and finally, at the beginning, the Fregenet just in order to make bridges, he invented the post-tested concrete. And then when we have to do very complex solutions like the Sydney Opera by Hudson, then this is the technicals that we use. No? And for me, then the 21st century has to be the century of timber. And everything begins with Philibert Dorme. He has like this construction manual for the cheap solutions or something like this. And he's like, because normally it's a technology that talks about how to go farther than the length of the tree. How can we use timber and not depending of how tall is the tree that I cut. So he found out a way with all timber connections, timber with timber, to make these arches that Baumann, all the military architecture in France in the 18th century, he made it like with this. So normally we don't see them because they normally are high, but this is in a situation where it is totally exposed. Then we have the invention of Otto Hedner of the laminated timber at the beginning of the 20th century. That here, one of the first users was here in Switzerland, no? Turner Chopard, that it was mainly used for spawn, no? So in this railway depot in Bern, they use it. And in the 1994, that's around only 30 years ago, they invented in the University of Graz, Gerald Schiehofer invented laminated timber. So in this point, we were able to do linear elements, but not two-dimensional elements. So this invention allows us to work with two-dimensional elements that allow us to think timber as like the way we're doing models. Okay, so this is like, so everything is like, it's a consequence of that. It's not that the architect invented a system. It has to do with the invention of a really good system that was developed. No? So which are the benefits of using timber? Everybody knows, but I will go very fast. So we capture emissions. So while timber grows, captures emissions. And this capture is better to dry it and keep it encapsulated than if you let it burn. Or because in Spain, many of the forests, they end up burned, or if you decompose, all this CO2 goes back to the atmosphere. So if we dry it, we're able to capture it. Also, we can go back, if we do maintenance of the forest, we can go back to the material. Then we have some hydrothermal behavior that absorbs, regulate humidity. It absorbs some of the others. It's a very light construction, and we can industrialize and gain some time. But there are some difficulties: the fire resistance, the cost, and the noise. Okay, so we will talk about those difficulties. So in order to solve the difficulties, fire, we have to. Well, there are two strategies. One of them is to increase the thickness. So every centimeter we gain 30 minutes. So we have a resistance of 90 minutes. So we have to put, when we see the slab with the exposed timber, we have 3 extra centimeters than the minimum of the structure. Another solution is we cover it, we put a plaster, a gypsum board, and then in this case, in the facade, we have 2 gypsum boards and 1 extra centimeter in the. But because of this, remember in the competition we had this cross structure. That means that I have to increase 3 centimeters in every size of the cross. So that means that we lose the relation of the surface. So we are losing. So we increase the cost because we need more timber, but at the same time we are losing surface for the habitats. That's why we decided to change and put pins, pillars and beams of glue lamp in the middle and leave the CLT for the slabs and for the walls. And then as it was we didn't have more money because it was made with timber, so the budget was the same. So we tried to optimize, reduce the amount of timber that we needed. So this is the formation. If we put the slab into two supports of the room, so 360, so we have 6 millimeters. But if we do a continuous slab and we compensate moments, this boring thing that they explained us in the structures, then it reduces into 3, and then when we add the cantilevers, it reduces into 1 millimeter. So that means that at the beginning we needed more than 15 centimeters. At the final versions we only needed 12, but we built it with 15 in order to have the 3 extra that we needed for a fire. Okay, so now here we see how's the logic. So all these elements, they came in one piece in order to compensate all the moments. So it was the maximum distance of the transportation. But then for the beams and the pillars, we wanted to do the same, but we cannot bring a beam of the length of the building. So we have to make some cuts, and every time in order to make a cut, to make a joint with timber, it's very easy to make it like an articulation. It's very hard to work as in hyperstatic. That's why we didn't do the joint in the support, because in the support we have a very high moment. So we went into these points where the moment is 0. So that's normally 1/5 of the distance between the supports. So we designed this piece that allowed the beam to be divided into 2. And then this other piece that it doesn't allow the compression to affect the beam, and then making this very easy joint as an articulation, but the way it behaves is in a very, very static way, so they compensate moments equally. So this is like the most important detail of the building that allow everything to go, and we didn't make any holes, so the same place of the mechanics, we put the pillar going over there. And I always like to imagine like we are drawing the bending moment just with the construction. So this is the plan, the final structural plans. And this is the nice thing, the potential of reducing. In the competition, we needed 0.5 cubic meters by square meters. In the final versions, we only needed 0.24 cubic meters by square meters, less than the half. So I always say that even building with timber is sustainable, building with half of the timber is more sustainable. And I say this because sometimes people understand that as we can count the negative, the capture of energy of the timber, sometimes people decided to use more timber to have better numbers, but it's not real. Okay? But the walls, the facades and the slabs are the same, so the big change is the pillars and the beams. And the final one is the sound. This is the most difficult one we are dealing with timber. So this is like a conceptual map between heavy slabs and heavy walls. Heavy slabs, light walls.
Set.
Light slabs, heavy walls, light walls, light walls. This is the most difficult one. That's where we are. Please. Okay. But talking about sound, we have the direct sound and we have the indirect sound. The direct sound is kind of easy. So because we only have to go through something that has been tested, and if they have the numbers, it's going to work. So in this case, we went to the gypsum, and they had this tested to 64. We needed 50, so it's going to work by sure. So all the separation, all the partly walls are made with gypsum. Then the horizontal. Then we have this. There are two solutions. The law of mass. But as we are talking a very light material, doesn't make any sense because all the advantage of being light, you lose it. So you need at least 400 kilos by square meter. So or using like mass spring mass solution. So we did a first mass that was made with sand, 6 centimeters of sand. Then we put a layer 3 centimeters of rock wool. This is the spring, and the final mass is a concrete layer of 5 centimeters. So now we have the 2 mass. Is like a bit more, not so, but it's good enough. So every time the sound goes, so this is working. So if the sound goes like this is isolation. It goes through here, isolated, and here, the regulation is much lower. So here we have 50 dBs, and here only 32. But here with the double Gibson, it's solved. But the problem is that the sound is not doing this. Sometimes it goes through there, but sometimes somebody talks, this vibrates, and makes the vibration of the slab. And it's not going through all my layers. It's going horizontally. So the solution was to be very strict and to cut all the slabs that they don't have continuity. There's no continuity of 2 timber CLT slabs, okay? But there's more continuities because it is a structural element. So you talk, there's a vibration, and then sound goes down here, and then makes vibrate here, and then you end up having noise here. But then we realized that every time that then the noise has to turn 90 degrees, you have a loss of a 30% of effectivity. So if every time we have 2 changes before 2 exposed surfaces, it won't be counted. The easy solution is to put a layer here, but we couldn't afford it, okay? Okay, so here we see all this relation of all the plan of all the cuts that we did with the structure, no? And here you can see these elements that are all the cuts in one direction and the other direction, and then the benefits are this. The velocity in the first week, well, there's they took a bit at the beginning because they're like 5 centimeters in the slab of difference, so the precision of the concrete has nothing to do with the millimeter precision of the timber, so they have to make a horizontal line, and then they begin to go there, so they took 2 weeks for the first slab, then they go fast, and then they begin to do this. This is the stair. The stair is the one that is solving the horizontal actions, the wind, and all the horizontal actions of the building, but we cannot put it at the beginning because it will fall. So we wait until we have 2 slabs, and then we put it here. Yeah, and then we begin to work to build around it. Okay, and this is the moment. It has to enter into the holes. Okay. Okay, but now then we always like to go back to the buildings and understand what's the life happening. So this is a video we did here. We understand this porosity. This is so we have also the porosity between neighbors, one in front of the other. So we have, this is the layer of the intimicity that to give some privacy, but whenever they want, they can. So we can see the street in the other side. So this is something that is really nice for us. Okay, so all this working with this slicing doors and all this porosity that we feel every time we are there. Okay, and now we had the opportunity to visit many of the dwellings, how the real inhabitants are living in there. Okay, and we did the effort of redrawing them. They are not, but they're very conventional. Okay, but it is interesting. It is interesting, this ambiguity that it begins with this Engawa, this terrace of the entrance, that they don't agree on that. That's a beautiful thing, that some people understand that the doormat has to be outside, but some others, they understand that the doormat has to be when they enter to the interior. So this ambiguity, it's in many other spaces, and this is something that we love that it happens because it shows all the potential that the project has. No? So here we have like all the different situations, how we imagine, no? All the houses together. So this is one of the first houses. So it's nice, it says welcome, no? This is the celebration with a neighbor. So it begins, so they have a studio in the entrance. So normally the second one of the rooms, they convert it into the living room. Okay, yeah. So normally the living room should be here, but they put it there. They put the studio in the entrance because they don't have kids yet. It's a young couple, and they also have this is for the guests, and also have the room. And here, well, we see this enfilade. And what I was saying, you know, the corners that allows people to anchor their living, no? In every corner, you will always find how people approach the space. And also in Dengawa, this is the other terrace, the terrace of the street, and they put the sofa in the limit, no? This is the entrance. This is another one we changed, and here they put the shoes, so they understand a bit more Japanese. So this is like the real Dengawa, and then you enter without shoes. Okay, they have a kid and a baby, so it's a more complicated situation. So they really they enter with the living room, and they are using the 3 bedrooms. So this is this relations in the entrance. So here we see the entrance. Well, one of the nice things that you can do double access. So you can, if you work, you can have a direct access for your home work, and not through the. So this is like some of the potential of this differentiation. In this case, this is one of the bedrooms of the kids. This is the other one. Or I think this is the same one. Yeah. So he plays here. I'll see here. The bed. Okay. I think this is another one. They also have one baby. Right. There's some leisure there. Okay, the corners. It's how different. In this case, again, they are entering through this space, but they have the studio. So the first one had the studio in the entrance, but they do some homework. But this is home working, facing the street. Okay, and well, and this he put many plants in the entrance, so you enter like through a garden. So this is their room. So they have just a kid, so they prepared this for the kid, and again, all the furniture in the corners, no, and all this porosity, and this centrality of the house. Okay, this is the entrance. This is him working. This is the terrace facing the street, and there's another one. This is an architect, and he took away some walls. Well, but he has a really nice house with the sofa and the hamaca. Okay, in this case, he has a studio, but not in this side, the other side. So it's like funny when you. So it's always the same typology, and it's changing a bit. That's all. This is the porosity what we see here. Well, just to see the diversity. Okay. And how people, the life that you see in these spaces, that it wouldn't happen if it were no private space, no? Yeah. And one of the corner, a different typology, okay? So this is a typology that you enter through this piece, and you have many diagonal relations. Okay, these enfilades. And this situation that you have more porosity. Okay. Well, getting to the end. Okay, all of this has a lot to do with this text of Robin Evans that is called Figures, Doors and Passages. It's written the year I born. So, and it's in this book that is a translation from the Drawing Buildings and Other Sayings, okay? And it is a very important text that explains how the evolution of the house is part of the evolution of the conquest of intimacy. So, well, we begin in the medieval times with the shared unique room, that everybody shares that room, but then in the Renaissance we found this invention of the interconnected rooms that we can find in many of the Italian palaces, with this relation that, you know, that as Robin is explaining, that you meet people by casual encounters. It's not that it's a way of understanding the house that you pass through. So all the rooms have at least two doors. This is three, but this allows that many ways of moving, very similar to the one of the Japanese, but not too wide, but has like this relation of the casual encounters. And then this is the first time we found a corridor, and it's an invention in England for Roger Pratt. At that moment, he didn't want to kill the matrix of room. He was thinking of putting circulation for the servants, so that you don't meet the servants. So he's keeping many of the enfilades or circulation between the rooms, but he made this invention in order to get some intimacy to the servants, but not between. But then this idea, in the 19th century, because of this book, The Gentleman's House of Robert Kern, that Robert Kern, he was like a great defensor of using the corridor in order to get the maximum intimacy. That the privacy has to get, so your more private space is your room, so nobody has to enter to go to another place. So he wrote that book, and then it got very popular, So then in the modern movement, we can see this is Alexander Klein. It's very funny because he draws a matrix of rooms and he says bad example. So, and then, with this archization of, this idea of the canalization, because whenever you invented the corridor, what happens is that we give hierarchy. It works as a tree. So it's a main branch, and then you go to the secondary, and there is no more than one way. So he, with this modern idea, this is good, that all the functions are separated, and this is bad because all this that he thinks is bad is the casual encounters that were good for the Renaissance, okay? And this is a funny thing that they did this analysis of the house in the Royal College. So they put these sensors in one of the houses in Cornellà, and one for the users, and then we can understand how we always have these encounters, these casual encounters that they didn't want it. And what we think is that in the 21st century, the room will no longer be the place where we store our intimacy. It's the devices. So this is the change that made possible that we can do this project, that it's like the intimacy has become more liquid, so it's not, it doesn't become a space, it's something. So as Sigurd Baumann was saying, we're living in this liquid modernity. That means that now we're changing this area of intimacy, and that's why we're able to go back to this matrix of rooms. Okay, so this is the plan we wanted to build in the competition. You know, with these other connections, we didn't do it because people in Cornellà, maybe they're not that modern yet, but we think that in the next years it will be more easier to get to all this porosity because we have to change. And now the only thing that we are really scared is that somebody looks at our device from behind, so we have the corners, so we can protect from that. And understanding that all these characteristics, no, this movement through filtration, that we can go everywhere from any room, no, and we can have double access, no corridors, no hierarchy, decide which is the use what we give to every space. And that's what we try to do in the office. In many other projects, this one we just finished, but we were able to put more doors. This is made with earth, but always with these porosities. That's really fast. And just to finish, this is the sentence of Robin Evans from the book. He ends the text with this sentence. But on the other side of this definition, there is surely another kind of architecture that would seek to give a full play to the things that have been carefully masked by its antitype. An architecture arising out of the deep fascination that draws people towards other, an architecture that recognizes passion, carnality, and sociality. The matrix of connected rooms might be well integrated in the future in such buildings. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the wonderful lecture and the great insight into your work. I really appreciated this like two phases in which you explained the project. One that has to do more with the social aspect and the typological investigation, and the other part that deals more with the material constituencies of the building. I would like to challenge the material let's say argumentation and celebrate the social and typological, and then I have a question for that. As for my challenge for the material genealogy, that each century has its own material, I think I have different reasons to challenge that argument, but perhaps a very simple one is in your own construction of that genealogy, in which you even had to put the Seagram building in the 19th century to argue that the 19th century is the century of steel, when we know that the Seagram building was built in the 20th century as one of the most canonical buildings 50 years after the domino. But that's just the footnote of the historian of the school.
Can I answer first? Can I answer this really fast? No, this, we put the Seagram because the photograph was very clear. We don't have photographs of all the first skyscrapers in Chicago, but they were all built in the 19th century through all the iron that it was from the railways. So the invention of the skyscraper has a lot to do with iron, and it's in the 19th century. But I understand that the photograph is not the best, but we don't have good photographs.
Oh, sorry, you're really challenging me on this. The Seagram building was built in 1951.
Not the Seagram.
But that's the picture you had in the...
Yeah, it was the lecture drive, but I was talking of the Chicago buildings of Daniel Burnham and, but
Chicago's.
Yeah, the Chicago school. It's but no, it's not important. It is not important. It's not that every century there is only one material. This is not what I mean it. I mean that there is like a material that is leading a change. So there are many materials in every century, but for me, the big changes in architecture came from the iron in the 19th century. The big changes in architecture came from concrete in the 20th century, and the big changes are going to come from the timber. But I agree that you don't agree, so don't worry. It's not. It's
for example, we agree that the lecture drive is a very important change. And that's why you had it on your slide, but it's a building from the 20th.
Yeah, it is. That's
not the point.
I think it's very interesting the typological aspect of the project, and how it challenges also perhaps one of the most pervasive modern inventions, which is the notion of the apartment. which is, has defined structures of life, social hierarchies. It's an extremely pervasive invention. I think the project really tries to challenge that by avoiding the differences in sizes of rooms, challenging ideas of circulation. But also, I can see that the project perhaps must have had further ambitions than the ones that could be realized in that challenge of the apartment. So my question is, what are the aspects in which you're more proud or happy about this challenge against the idea of the appartement, and in which moments you wish it could have been pushed further and for different reasons that didn't happen, and maybe you can share with us why those were.
Okay, I normally end with another sentence that is from Chillida, that it says that always different but never the same. No, but it's because we are really happy that with this project we push like the border of what it was possible a bit. So we are so satisfied with that. We cannot make all the changes. So by having this example, you can go and visit it. So you cannot be scared of building with timber, and you can not be scared of having no corridors and not be scared. So it helps a lot. So for me, every project has to be a small step or as big as it can, but I don't regret anything, because it has to do, we will do it in the next project. And by doing this project, we're able to do the next one. So it's not something that, I am very happy of being able to convince, because the question of it was not a competition of how has to be the housing of the 21st century. It was a competition very conventional. And I'm very happy that they had the confidence with us to go further with what we did propose. So and in another thing, so if you ask me, how do I think it has to go on, the housing, I think we have to share more, we have to have less private space. This is things that I have already explained here that we're doing in the course. So I think that the future of the housing has to change a lot, but this is one of the steps that we needed to do.
First of all, thank you. Thanks a lot for this incredible, beautiful lecture, but also really important work. And for me, actually, I knew the project, but I think your explanation for me was very impressive because it's very rare to have an architect presenting a built project with a very strong theoretical presentation. Often what happens is that people try to post-rationalize their work with some reference, but when you look to your project, you look to the Ozu movie, and then you see that enfilade, you see the fourth wall, and then you see the interior of your housing. It's almost like a one-to-one reenactment. But actually what is really incredible is that the Ozu look at that space was very melancholic, because he knew that very soon it was gone, and it was actually erased exactly by the idea of modern domestic space that Robin Evans actually criticized in his article, while actually you propose that space as something that looked to the future. So there is an interesting kind of twist of that reference, because if in Ozu's was a sort of melancholic eology of something that would soon be gone, in your project becomes actually something that you propose, for something that is going to happen, perhaps. And so my question is, to what extent in the competition you really had that idea? Because competitions usually you want to win. So you have to be very careful to make a statement, because the risk of a statement actually backfires. Usually private commissions are good for statements, but competitions, you have to be very careful. You don't have to disappoint the client, the jury. You have to make something nice, but not too radical. So my question to you, that idea of the matrix, that idea of Ozu, Robin Evans are something that were very strong at the beginning, or something that grew organically within the process?
No, it was from the beginning, and it is funny because I always explain that this building it exists because Spain went through a very big crisis with the Lehman Brothers. So all the developers stopped for 10 years, and this developer, once he tried to begin again, he thought, okay, maybe the way we were doing things was not the proper thing. Let's be open to other things. So we had done this same proposal before the crisis and never win. So it's like once that there is like this moment that there's no the inertia, no? There's no inertia, so they cannot tell you this is not working. What works is what we're doing, because they're not doing anything. So then they check it and they say, okay, it looks like it works. So why not? And they were really, they take lots of risks just by, and you know, and it was talking about the strategies. The most difficult thing was not the typology. It's like building with timber. And we did the proposal, and we also draw a diagram and say, if you don't want with timber, you can work with concrete. So at the end, so we won, and they said, okay, it's going to be with concrete, so forget about timber. And then, okay, let's give it a try. So we went to talk with them, and then we went to explain it to the mayor, and the mayor told us that you don't understand it, but people of my town, they are not very well informed about the new ways of construction. So if they want to make a refurbishment, they will find a wall of timber and they will cut it, and the building will fall. So then we had this great idea. So we told him, okay, yeah, you're right. We're not going to do a timber building. So we're going to do a steel building. So we put pillars and steel beams, and then we told him, but once we have this, we will put the slabs with timber, because nobody's going to cut the slab. And as we have to do a facade, and we have to close it, so we'll do the facade with timber, because nobody is going to cut the facade. And he accepted. And we did it like this until all the construction project. And when the construction began, the enterprise that was going to build it were very worried that this is going to be very expensive. And well, we have a metal structure with the welding, we can burn the wood. And we told them, yeah, you're right. Why don't we do everything with timber? and that's what happened. At that moment, they asked again to the mayor, but then he was a bit proud of the project, and then it happened. So I always say that, like, changing reality, you cannot push too much. So you push until you are able to push, but then you are very aware of the opportunities that you have to do where you really want to go. But if we had to build it with concrete, we would be happier anyway.
Thank you very much. It was a brilliant presentation. I have a question about individuality and sociality. When you read Zygmunt Bauman, he speaks about liquid society as the expression of individuality, of an extreme individuality. So I understand in your typology, the freedom your typologic structures give to the inhabitant to organize his life inside. What did you observe about sociality at the scale of the building?
I don't know if I'm able to answer this question. Okay, because the program, I do totally agree that the evolution is going towards individuality, but the solution is not the matrix for that. The solution for that is sharing, and it's another strategy that we have done in other projects. That projects and the area we are working working for families, so it's not that case of the individuality. So actually, in this idea of the evolution of the house, that we went from the medieval equal shared room, big room. Then we went to the matrix of rooms, then with the canalization of the corridor, and now, in our point of view, we're going back to this matrix, and for us, the next step is going back to the unique room, individual unique space that is more around 20 square meters, and you have your kitchenette, you have your bathroom, and then you share the rest of the services. And also, it answers a lot of this idea of the new generations, that they are like the Z generation, that they grown with the devices, and they are also recorded, they are producers, so they call it prosumers, so they produce and they consume. So the house has to be like a big studio, so they can film and they can do. So talking about this evolution, we think we will talk of the unique space at the end.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and congratulations for the project, because I think it has been like a wonderful journey for an architect, especially to test this modularity. Well, of course, the main point of this project? All these rooms, there are the same dimension. But what I would like to ask is, like, in general, what did you learn from this project? Because I think that what you challenged is this having this housing project made of all rooms that are the same. That I think it's super challenging again, and that allows the user to use the house in different ways, as you show. But also, I think that something that you ask probably yourself while designing the thing is, like, there are special rooms like the kitchen and the bathroom. There are the fixed one. They are kind of forced to have a certain kind of dimension and a certain kind of use. So, like, is really honestly, what did you learn? Like, would you use the same kind of technique for these two special, let's say, room that cannot change so much their final use? Or do you think that somehow, or maybe you find that having the bathroom and the kitchen in two rooms equal to the other gave them a plus, even if there is like some extra room? Because especially in the case of I don't know if I'm clear in what I'm saying.
No, I try to answer. Okay, no.
Because it's something that I really love the project. I think it's really important as a text from an architectural point of view, because it's like how a theoretical idea transferred to a way of hoping that.
Okay, I try to answer. Okay, the first thing is that in order to be sustainable, the thing that we learn by this project and some others is that the spawn of architecture that years ago was like connected with the parking. So we put in the pillars, the distance, it was thing with the car. Now it depends on the room. And they're like much lower spawns, and then that allows you to go to very more low carbon solutions. So this idea of changing the unit, so before the unit was the house, was the parking, and then you have to fit a house into this structure that we have in the parking. Now we fix the room, and these measurements of the room are much more sustainable. So just by reducing the distance of the supers, you can reduce 50% of the amount of emissions. So putting more walls, it's more sustainable. So this project talks about this. But then, as Herzog has said many times, the paradox is the basis of architecture. So we have this idea of equal things, and as you said, there are spaces that need more space. But that's why we work with this idea of the enfilade. That's why we work with this idea of the porosity. Why are there some rooms that they open? So that whenever you are in these kinds of spaces, you always have this go through, and you never see the 13 square rooms. 13 meters is not enough for a kitchen, But this is the paradox that they have to work with. But that doesn't mean we cannot go farther with the concepts. We have to overlap them. You know, in the Robin Evans text, it says that Leonbattista Alberti was very worried of the privacy, intimicity of the connected rooms, but instead of using corridor, he decided to put the more private spaces in the corners and make a degradation of the intimicity. Well, so for me, you don't have to renounce to say no to do something because you have a paradox. For me, having a paradox is the clue to find a very good architectural solution. When we try to do projects sharing, with the kitchen outside the house, so we only leave the bathroom and the kitchenette, so they have a very human scale. Then these shared spaces, they have to be taller, they have to be wider, they have to have different spans, so but it's another concept. Does it answer?
Yes, but just like, I mean, just so to be clear, it was not a critique, it's just like you coming out of this experience, how do you live it and what you learn from it, like if you had to build another housing project tomorrow, it's more about like how your test, since you were like in the very, very foreground of this thing, how, I mean, how you react today to this project?
Well, for me, the big lesson has to be to changing the spawns, changing the aggregation unit into the more personal, and it has a lot to do with this individuality that we are going through. It's one of the big lessons that had not only affected to the way we live, so also affected the way we build.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a quick question. It's about the cinema. I didn't know, I knew the project, but I didn't know that there was a cinema underground. And in a way, it's a mixed-use building, like not only housing, but with something else. And I know it's maybe not the brief of the competition, but like the mixed-use building is more and more like a current subject in architecture for urbanistic reason or the dynamism of the neighborhood. And so my question is, like, do you think about like the granulometry, of the project, like really homogeneous? Is it compatible with like other programs if it has to enter in the buildings in other projects? Would it be possible to have, like, I don't know, big rooms for public programs and small homogenic rooms for the dwellings, for example? And in a way, I have the impression that the idea of the Famille Terre de Guise that you showed us, like with the big central room, is the beginning, in a way, of this idea to have like small units, repetitive units that are able to offer one big unit and a change of scale. So in a way, yeah, is it like the change of scale still possible in an homogeneous room?
Yeah, when we explain that we space, these thermodynamical spaces for us, all these bigger spaces that has to have the scale of the community, they have to be thermodynamical and they have to behave. If we had covered it, it would be more clear. Now it's more than a patio, but we have tried with a canopia, and also, so this is something that we know that the way we move through a building has to have that scale that you are defining, and when you overlap the uses. In this case, we have a changing of the structure. So we have a concrete structure of 720 distance of the supers, and then the other one has like the 360. No, so it's that means but it is the improvement of changing the span of the housing. It's a big deal. I think from this project we have never gone back to have big spans in any project.
Mine is more a comment that perhaps can also turn into a question, but I think it's a very clever, choice or decision at the moment that you choose to work with the matrix, because it seems that also your critique seems it's a critique to the corridor by removing the corridor from the apartment, actually it becomes a kind of automatically more a street, like it has the character of a street more than a corridor, which seems to be in your case, the gallery. And it reminds me actually of some precedents and examples also from some regions of South Italy, in Salento, when you have this system of matrix where basically the house is usually a sequence of rooms. They are all of the same size, 5 meters per 5 meters, because they depend on the capacity to be the vault by master builders. So you enter through the street. The first room usually can be the living room, but sometimes it can even be the bedroom. So you cross the bedroom, then you are in another room, then the kitchen. So basically it's kind of not a precise definition of function, which makes these precedents still part of an heritage that, I mean, somehow people used to live in that way. So my question eventually would be, do you have precedents of this kind in Spain as well, or in the region that you are working?
I don't know. No, there are many precedents. In Nueva Orleans, they have the one-shot house, that it's an enfilade they have the doors, and that's because we can shot and the bullet can go from one side to the other. Some cases of Pompeian houses can have like this idea, they don't have corridors, but they use the atrio to enter, and some of them they connected, but not many of them, but the sizes are really similar. There are, but no, it's not a relation with vernacular architecture that we have, not in a conscient way.
Thank you very much for the lecture. Quick question. The size of the rooms are not fully the same, no?
No.
Slight difference. Could you explain why?
Yeah, you can see the drawing of all the lines. Now, it's more or less, but it is. I'm really happy about that because I was in Chicago 2 weeks ago, and I thought I was going to love right when I came back loving. I was thinking I was going to love Mies, but I came back loving right. Because this perception that Mies had, it's impossible. So try to be so, because the way Mies is doing being perfect, it's reducing. So we reduce the privacy in the Farnsworth house. So we don't solve all the things, and then we can be really conceptual. As I said, the measurements were totally fixed. So that means, how long is this? Okay, sorry. So we had to. So here you see 353, 366, 366. So it has to do with to fit the lift over here. So this is a bit wider because we have to put a circumference here. So to solve all, so actually the central one, it's a bit wider than the other ones, but then these rooms, so you see, this is 380 by 360, no? So it is.
I mean, this is actually, if you look at plan by Cornellà, it's exactly.
Yeah, or Palladio, sometimes he puts another.
It's only an intellectual assumption that these plans are, very precise, but you always have to then adapt to the.
Yeah, and as I told, this dimension was totally fixed. All the outer dimensions were that. So we had to manage to make it happen. And then there are some tries with less amount of rooms or more. So sometimes some of the tries, so until we find one that fitted, and this is the funny thing.
Also, thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed how you moved from the poetic to the very constructive principles. But something is, to me, very interesting about the project, that it's still so generic, even if you tell all the nice details and all the nice stories. And in its expression, you said it's democratic, which is also very nice about it. But I was wondering, it's a bit more, maybe a funny question, if you ever been approached to build the exact same house somewhere else.
We've tried, but I don't know. Well, we have. Well, it's never the same. You know, it is never the same. But with the equal rooms, we have done. The one of Ibiza has equal rooms, but they are 3x4. Has a lot to do with the regulation over there and the setbacks we had to solve. And then we realized that the square proportion was much better than the rectangular. This is something that we learned after doing that, but actually, but it's easier to put the narrow because the consumption of the facade, so 3x4, it's easier to do than that one. Now we are doing a project in Costa Rica, but I don't know if they're going to build it that has this proportion, but, well, we try, but it's not easy.
Well, thank you very much. It was really wonderful. I discovered also quality. It's a sort of comment, but I don't know. I've got a very simple question. Do you know how many rooms is the project?
The total rooms?
Yeah. The number of the rooms.
549.
So the change of unity is really interesting because you are coming from the room and not the dwelling, but I can explain it as it produces a sort of image of a multitude. And I think that is, in your project, that is something that is really nice because we can't, when you are in the urban space, you can't know how much dwellings is the project, and you know that everybody wants to know where is my home, and you don't know, you just feel a part of a big community. So that is something that is really, really nice in a collective building, I mean. So thank you very much.